Liz, hello.
Hey, so good to be here.
This is Liz Segren, a senior staff writer at Fast Company.
I spent 3 months going deep into the heart of Sephora, and it was a fascinating exploration.
Sephora is compelling for any number of reasons. And one is it's been a leader in the beauty industry working with Gen AI and broader AI technology. Liz published an incredible feature story on Sephora back in December, so I called her up to get some context around where Sephora's investments in AI tech fit in its overall story right now.
As far as its retail footprint, it is unparalleled. But I think more importantly, what I learned as I was reporting this is that Sephora has a very powerful role to play in deciding who the billion-dollar beauty brands on the market are. The brands that it plucks out and it carries within its store have the power to become these enormous players in the retail space. So some of the biggest brands in beauty today, like Sol de Janeiro, Rare Beauty, Drunk Elephant, Danessa Myricks, all of these brands were incubated at Sephora.
Liz ties the size of Sephora's tech muscle to the leadership of its CEO.
Sephora's CEO, Artemis Patrick, she began working in the world of e-commerce 20 years ago when e-commerce was just emerging. So she's deeply versed in what it takes to get consumers excited about brands online. And so, she's been instrumental in making Sephora a very tech-forward company. Sephora launched its website very early and made it really interesting to explore brands online in a way that's not dissimilar from how you would be exploring a brand in store. So even though you couldn't try on beauty products necessarily, it was really, fun to sort of look at the brand stories on the website. As time went on, Sephora began incorporating tools that would allow you to try on virtually lots of different makeup products. And so its e-commerce platform is very, very robust and exciting, and it does a lot of business online. Even though makeup tends to be a very tactile kind of product, it's managed to sell a lot of product online.
Sephora's parent company, LVMH, doesn't break out individual company sales, but its selective retailing business unit, which houses Sephora, duty-free retail chain DFS Group, online retailer 24S, and a pair of Parisian department stores, surpassed $18.2 billion in revenue in 2024. LVMH chairman and CEO Bernard Arnault highlighted the retailer in the company's January earnings report, saying it had delivered a remarkable performance with double-digit growth in both revenue and profit. Also in January, a McKinsey piece reported that Gen AI could add up to $10 billion to the global economy based on its impact on the beauty industry alone. That piece singled out 4 specific areas: hyper-personalized targeting, experiential product discovery, rapid packaging concept development, and innovative product development. As consumer brands go, the beauty industry has been ahead of the curve on AI, with companies like Sephora, L'Oreal, Dior, Estée Lauder, P&G, all creating AI-powered tools for customers to use as early as 2017. Sephora is the kingmaker of the $30 billion high-end beauty industry, as Liz's story so effectively makes the case. If we want to peek under the hood to get a glimpse of how one of the most powerful brands in an incredibly influential consumer industry is thinking about Gen AI right now, then this is the perfect place to shop. I'm Jeff Beer, and this is Brand New World from Fast Company. Today's episode, Finding the Right Foundation for AI in Beauty. Now that we've gotten some context from Liz, it's time to hear from Sephora's leadership. I got in touch with Sephora's US CMO, Zena Arnold, and Vlad Kuznetsov, the company's chief information officer. Between them, I'm hoping we get both the left brain and right brain accounts of how Sephora's been using AI over the past few years, and how it built the foundations for its strategy for the years ahead. I started by asking Vlad about how Sephora's history of working with cutting-edge tech has helped set the tone for how the company is thinking about AI.
I think there was always understanding that clients expect us to talk to them as if we know who they are And that's what happens in the store when they come in the store and talk to beauty advisor. Beauty advisor asks a lot of questions to understand who the client is, what they're looking for. And basically the same expectation is online. So I think company was smart enough to put some investments because the AI doesn't come overnight. You need to invest in data platform, you need to build it up. Eventually it brings you fruits. And that's what the strategy always was. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. Zina, because so much of, to Vlad's point about the customer passion, their willingness to kind of, obviously there's a lot of data there, but a lot of the tools, at least we see on the outside, are about the experience with Sephora and how, whether it's how you guys use Gen AI or AI-powered tools like color matching and in other ways. How would you describe the way the company generally approaches its approach to technology, I guess, but AI specifically, when it comes to the brand and how it might be helpful to its customers?
Yeah, our approach is really rooted in our values. When you think about Sephora and what we stand for, we want to welcome everyone to the world of beauty. And beauty is a fascinating category because it's extremely personal. It's really tactile. It's different than some other things that I've worked on in the past that are more of commodities. Here, the experience is a really big part of the shopping journey and how consumers engage with us. And so when we think about our approach to AI, we want to keep that at the very heart of everything that we do. People, whether that's our clients or whether that's our employees, are critical. And in my view, AI can really be impactful when it's solving for something that is a difficulty in the shopping process or the usage process, things that are annoying. We don't want to use AI for AI's sake, but we want to make that journey better. I mentioned our values, and we have a really strong perspective on inclusion, and beauty looks very different for different people. And I think AI, it's kind of a neat tool to use to help with personalization. How do we let them shop smarter in the ways that they want? Some people want meandering, exploratory. They love to play and just hear about everything that's new. Some people know exactly what they need. They want to find it. They want to get out. So to me, AI is a really interesting way of improving that shopping experience, getting more of our clients exactly what they're looking for and in the way that they want it.
Vlad, I was just thinking about when you were talking about the beginnings of thinking about AI. Was there a shift in there? Like, obviously 2017 was before, the world kind of opened up to Gen AI and, ChatGPT and others, obviously, all these newer tools. How did that shift in the technology more broadly impact the way you guys thought about this technology internally?
Specifically, Gen AI you're talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Of course, it was a revolution. Everyone knows that. But even before that, as I mentioned, we worked on data platform. We worked on personalizing client experience. Specifically, early on, you mentioned Skin Scan that was launched way before Gen AI started and heavily used AI. In fact, AI, it's an interesting story. AI was a big unlock there. This is a solution in store that basically allows beauty advisor to help client to choose foundation. And typically, a color of foundation is very similar to skin color for the client. And so where we started figuring out a hardware device that would allow to measure this color. And we spent a lot of time trying to make sure that this measurement is very correct. And so we would measure color for the skin, and then we would offer the same color of foundation to the client. And we were trying to figure out why doesn't it work? The unlock came because what we realized is not what the color of they want. There's some other color they want. Some of them want to look darker. Some of them want to look lighter or reddish or yellowish, whatever it is they want. And that's when AI came for rescue, because AI is the only technology can figure out this pattern. So what we did, we sent this device to all beauty advisors in all stores. and ask them to measure their color skin. And then we ask them, what foundation do you use? And based on that, it's basically training data, right? Then we put it in the model, and model figured out if you have color X, you want foundation with the color Y. And once we did it, it was like magically started working everywhere. So you were asking earlier what was one of the unlocks. So that definitely was one of very interesting unlocks. This device is deployed to all stores right now. Clients love it. And that, of course, there are hardware component, other component, but AI specifically was the key unlock to make it work.
One of the fascinating things, too, that we've found about it, as Vlad mentioned, it's one of the biggest consumer needs is finding a foundation that matches. And it's really tough to do because there's so many components to it. It's not just the color, it's what's your undertone, and then what's the type of formula you want, the finish you want. And when we started to put this everywhere and everyone was using it and getting great results, we actually featured it in one of our ads in kind of top of funnel. And so we ran a campaign on this, and it was one of the most successful campaigns for driving new clients because people saw, wow, this is an issue that I have. There's a way now that Sephora can help to solve it. And we just saw huge numbers of people coming into store to use the tool with the BA and get that expertise from us.
When were they first deployed? First question, and then next, when did that campaign come out to promote it?
So I know I joined 5 years ago, 2019, and before that, the device was already in stores.
Okay.
But sometime during my tenure, like 1 year in or 2 year in, we figure out the AI component.
The unlock there, yeah.
Probably 2021, we deployed all device to all stores, and that's where this journey truly started.
And from the marketing standpoint, we kicked in the advertising in 2023, I believe.
Awesome. It does seem like because beauty, to your point about the challenges around things like foundation, and there's a lot of potential utility with tools to whether they're online or in store. And I've seen different initiatives come out from various companies in that space. And how would you guys describe the competitive landscape as it applies to AI-powered, whether it's tools or initiatives that are meant to help customers? Do you look at that, or is it more about like your own, where you guys are at in terms of what your stores are offering them? Zena, maybe I'll start with you.
Of course, we're always looking at what the competitive landscape is, who's doing what. We want to make sure we're at that cutting edge. So we're always looking to see what people are doing. I would say, though, I think we're still in a heavy hype cycle on a lot of generative AI, especially. People are talking about it, and everyone wants to know what everyone else is doing. But the truly breakthrough applications of it are still fairly limited, at least from what I've seen. The exciting part is it's always changing and things are always coming out. So, even though today it's a bit maybe more hype than actual application, that's going to change really quickly. And so for me and my team, I keep telling them we've got to keep testing. We've got to keep trying things. I have a background working in tech, and that's one of the key reasons that tech companies are able to innovate so quickly, because they have a mindset of experimentation, and not everything has to be deeply analyzed and proven and vetted before you try it. You've got to figure out some low-risk ways to test things and see how they work. So that's the mindset we're in is, okay, some things sound interesting. Let's find a small way and place that we can test it so that we can learn. And we've got a few great learnings that have applied to the work that we're doing. And we've tested a number of things that haven't really worked. And again, I'll add the qualifier of yet, because they will develop and they will get better. But to me, the most important thing for organization is to keep testing and trying so that when you figure something out, you can be, again, at that leading edge to scale it.
Well, I'll get to the successes, but I'm very curious because I agree with you. And I think I've talked to sort of creators like filmmakers and things like on that side, production, on the idea of experimenting in public? Given the hype cycle, the feedback cycle for experimentation can be kind of brutal. What were maybe one or two examples of those things where you're experimenting hasn't quite worked yet? And then I'll ask about what's been the kind of successful lessons so far.
For things that haven't worked yet, we haven't yet found a way to reliably create creative to our standard. We are a prestige beauty retailer. We've got a lot of content that we create, and we want that content to be very high quality. And, we've been experimenting with a few ways of creating it using AI tools and haven't found the unlock, but again, a lot of good learnings that we've had along the way. I'd say something that has worked really well. We've been using AI to do propensity modeling for how we target people and how we deliver content to them. And so knowing exactly someone's purchase history and knowing their browse history on our site, where did they come to our site from, taking in all of these variables and based on what we know from other client behavior and kind of this machine learning that we're doing on each individual's client behavior, we can really get them the best possible content to deliver what is ideal for their journey. Again, whether that's someone who enjoys exploring and looking at 100 different products before choosing one, or if it's someone who really wants a lot of guidance and this is what you should get. And so we've found some really strong success in conversions on those kind of propensity campaigns.
Vlad, from a purely tech point of view, I imagine there's all kinds of considerations, and I don't know, not to say that there's an arms race on that side with other beauty brands or companies, but where does the company fit as someone who covers marketing and advertising? I kind of see the work kind of created with AI, but also hear about the efficiencies internally, whether it's something as simple as, you guys are a global company as well, but like translations of stuff on stuff has been made much easier and quicker. But how is AI being used sort of, we were talking about brand, but from the company perspective internally, what's the kind of strategy and internal outlook on deploying it in various parts of the company? How has that gone? And what's that journey been like, Vlad?
Yeah, it's basically strategy is twofold, right? The primary focus, of course, how can we launch customer-facing solutions? And one of the solutions we launched last year, review summarization, for example. So client, instead of some of the products have hundreds of reviews, right? And reviews are an important driver for purchase decisions. So clients read what other clients say, but there's so many of them. It takes so much time. And Gen AI is really good at summarizing things. So that's one of the features we launched last year. So you can go and see, based on Gen AI, here the top 3 things people are talking about. Makes it easier, and we test almost everything. So we tested and we could see significant boost in conversion. So that was early success with Gen AI. But basically, the second direction for us is internal tools, because Gen AI can make teams more effective internally, and we're already using it in many cases. For example, we use it for coding. Basically, engineers use Gen AI to write code. Also, internal knowledge bases. We launched internal bot that allows you to look up any information about your benefits, like internally in the company. And basically think about intranet, but instead of trying to search through pages and pages of intranet, you just basically ask the question and get an answer with the reference to original document. And of course, we are looking at lots of vendors coming up with solutions now, which is, of course, we try to innovate in some areas, build custom solutions. But you mentioned before, we're also looking to reuse whatever is happening on the market. So there are lots of vendors, customer service, for example, solutions that allow you to use chatbots. That's a big unlock as well. So there are lots of opportunities there that we are exploring right now.
This is exactly the kind of pragmatism I was hoping to hear. Listening to Sina, it's clear the marketing organization doesn't see these tools as a creative gimmick, but a profoundly powerful tool to know their customers better and therefore find ways to better serve them. Meanwhile, Vlad and his team are utilizing these tools for the organization to know itself even better in order to be more efficient and innovative. We're going to take a quick break, but when we return, I'm going to talk to them about creative risk-taking and how crucial transparency in their use of AI is to maintaining customer trust. In light of the polarized reactions to ads involving AI already, like the Coke holiday spots, of course, I'm curious about Zena's outlook on creative experimentation in public as a brand and at this point in Gen AI's history in advertising.
Going back to the idea of experimentation, kind of whether it's a creative risk or just experimenting in general with a tool or an idea and seeing what happens, it kind of feels like if the two letters AI are involved, the broader cultural conversation around it can sometimes, it feels like it might up the stakes of that experimentation, at least even in just people's minds. Like if someone if you came out with something or were trying something and it was just that thing was the thing and it didn't work. Okay, yeah, like you say, we move on, we have other ideas. But when it's like someone sees the thing and it didn't really work and it's powered by AI or whatever it is, it's like, oh, then it's like the conversation kind of changes a little bit whenever a brand, like I look at something like, I mean, we've had this conversation, I talked to them about it, but like the Coke holiday ads, right? Like, oh my God, can you imagine? This is just like an abomination. The reactions were way on this side or way on that side. And to me, and I wrote this, it was like, you know what? I didn't actually like the original 1995 ad all that much either. I thought that was cheesy. So, I mean, but because they're like AI, all of a sudden it's like the conversation is so much more heated. This is a long rambling question, I realize. But for either of you, is the work around this kind of loaded with that kind of baggage, or do you think about it more in terms of just the same as the work itself, the same as any other initiative, tool, or project?
I'd say from my standpoint, it can be loaded, as in what you share and the types of things that you do with AI. You can choose your biggest campaign of the year, your biggest moment, which is the bold approach. For us, I mentioned it earlier, let's find some lower risk ways to test this and see if it's something that we all feel great about and that we feel comfortable with. It's for us not necessarily about being the ones known for and getting all the press for doing something with AI. I want it to be practical. I want it to help our teams do things faster, better. I want it to help our clients and customers, shop in the best way for them. So we've stuck to an approach of smaller testings, things that work, figuring out how to scale rather than a big splashy sort of way of doing it. And for us, at least, I think that's the right approach. We don't want the how to take the center stage. We want the experience to be the best possible thing. And AI is a tool that helps our teams do that and helps our clients have the best possible experience.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to your earlier point when we first started talking about like the emphasis being on what the tool is and what it does for the customer as opposed to the fact it was made with AI. This is the point, not this over here. Vlad, how about from your perspective, whether it's the testing or thinking about new ways to use this? I mean, how much does it differ from any other type of technology or how you guys work or things in the past? Has there been a extra stakes or discussions around when things come to AI, or have you guys been thinking about that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a significant shift, and not because of all this PR hype outside, but really technology is very different. What we historically dealt with is very deterministic technology. For example, you decide to change your experience on a product page. So you update product page, and it used to look like A, now it looks like B, and it's very deterministic. It doesn't change. With AI, it's probabilistic. which means that, it's different for different customers, different for different situation. It depends on the context. It's basically truly impossible to test all the permutation, especially with Gen AI, right? The regular AI is basically, okay, it's picking one product versus the other to recommend to client, right? Still a lot of uncertainty there. But if you're talking about chatbot, for example, who can say things, right? And there's so many things that chatbot can say based on your prompt and then going back and forth, right? So how do you even test this, right? How do you get comfortable with the output for this chatbot when it's not deterministic at all? And so and it's much more difficult to test because, again, if you test deterministic experience, you test it once, you get result, you're done. It's always gonna be the same. With AI, it can change, the models drift. So I think in many respects, we as business leaders need to get comfortable to the new world. It's very powerful, so we cannot just be afraid and say, okay, we're not going to use it because it's scary, right? And so, as Zina mentioned, we need to figure out new ways to manage risk. And that's the new name of the game.
What's been, I don't know, I was thinking like, we see some of these tools and initiatives come out, or you read in the press how certain companies are working with AI. Is there any way how you guys are using AI or Gen AI at Sephora that might surprise people the most? Vlad, any way you think that might?
Hopefully, it's going to be smooth. As Zina mentioned, it's all about experience. So they shouldn't know it's AI, right? It just needs to work for them. It needs to feel right. And so we don't want people to be surprised. We want people to enjoy their experience. So that's the objective here.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the focus needs to be on the experience getting better, and AI should enable that. I also think that as we get more into the space in the coming years of generative AI truly getting better, we need to be clear about when we're using it in some of the very client-facing experiences. We've talked, myself and a number of people in the beauty industry, there's something potentially very powerful with being able to create a model with the exact same skin tone as me for me to see how and what products could look like on. Wow, that would be amazing. However, if we don't do that in the right way and tell people how we're doing it, it's kind of could be creepy. It could be strange if you don't tell people this isn't a real person and they don't know that this is the benefit of using an AI-generated model to help you with this. If you try to pass it off as it's someone who's real, that's totally against our values of authenticity. So, I think it's going to be very interesting as the technologies get better and better. There'll be more and more applications of them that'll be truer to life. And we have to figure out where are the places that I need to be very upfront with a client about this is why I'm using AI and this is a benefit that I think it's helping you with versus the kind of back end things that they don't really know, they don't really care, but the end experience is great for them. So, again, we haven't yet gotten to the place where I think some of those client-facing generative AI experiences are magical yet. But when we do, we'll have to be very clear about what it is. So there isn't some kind of an appearance of being tricked or inauthentic kind of engagements, interactions.
Yeah, as opposed to like talking about it being built with AI or using AI as a hype mechanism. It's a transparency mechanism. It's for transparency as opposed to hype. Yeah.
I like how she flips the idea of using Gen AI as a hype mechanism and instead wielding it as a transparency mechanism. Speaking of transparency, let's go back to my chat with Liz, because we did talk about how crucial that is in beauty. Other brands, notably Dove, have come out and declared they'll never use AI images in their marketing or advertising. I wanted to know what she thought of that, and the idea more broadly of planting a flag on AI this early in the game.
The way that AI maybe figures into imagery and visuals, I think that's a very interesting and complicated question. we're already seeing a little bit of this, but I think over time, it's going to be so tempting for beauty brands, and perhaps even Sephora, to use AI to create graphics and visuals for its brands to help, consumers figure out what a makeup shade would look like on a model on its website, things like that.
Yeah.
But this is very tricky because we've already seen in the past how consumers have reacted badly to images that have been digitally modified. I mean, if you recall, about 15 years ago, there was a lot of photoshopping happening in beauty ads, right? And in glossy magazines. This was just kind of the norm. If you looked at any beauty magazine like Vogue, it was just kind of accepted that a lot of the images would be digitally modified through Photoshop. But there was a very big backlash to this about 5 or 6 years ago, and CVS made this very radical stance saying that it was going to eliminate all photoshopping in its advertising because it wanted to present a much more realistic and authentic view of beauty. And this was in response to consumer demand. So I think that if we think about all of these companies, all these beauty brands tampering with images using AI, they risk facing another consumer backlash.
That made me think of, I think it was 2006 or 2007, Dove had a viral ad called Evolution, and it basically had this model walks in, beautiful woman, sits down, gets her makeup done, gets her hair done, and then it's like time lapse of like all the changes in Photoshop that are made. And now I think about that evolution, instead of being like a 3-minute film with AI, it would be like a 3-second film. Like, give me someone. And so Dove, I mean, this last year, a couple things. They came out with a piece of work called The Code, I believe it was called. And it was essentially giving people phrases to add to their prompts around, give me a beautiful image of X, Y, Z. And they added something like real beauty or hashtag real beauty. And basically it would get the AI to produce more realistic images of beauty, as opposed to like if you just type into a Gen AI program, a beautiful woman. I mean, the images that come back are pretty, going back to that backlash around Photoshop, pretty stereotypical, cliche images. And further, Dove pledged to never use AI in augmenting images. Much the same to your point around CVS, not using images. But I think a number of brands have made statements like that.
But I also wonder, though, Jeff, it might be a bit early to make a statement like that, because actually we don't really know exactly what the culture around AI is going to be in the years to come. We're already seeing the way that on Zoom calls, right? It's so easy to click a button and like make marginal improvements, right? To like the way that you're lit and like, how
I like to take my meetings in soft focus.
Totally, absolutely, right? We're already doing this as a matter of course every day. It's just totally normal now. We kind of expect it. And then also, I feel like the whole conversation around authenticity, it happened in conjunction with the body positivity movement. And so this was a whole movement about sort of accepting bodies no matter their shape and size. And actually, we've seen kind of a big pushback against that, right? Like a rolling back of that movement in the wake of Ozempic, right? And so now, when you see like the runway and when you see ads online, we're seeing largely like skinny models now, right? So the culture has changed in a major way. And so I wonder if there's like a cyclical nature to these things, whether there are times when consumers are actually more receptive to modified images and to this kind of monolithic idea of what beauty is. And then there are other times when we're pushing back against that. It might be too soon to say exactly how we're going to feel about modifications of the way people look through AI.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think of this? It's a giant industry. There's so many different brands with so many different personalities and images of the brands themselves. Obviously, this approach for Dove works. Real Beauty's been around for 20 years. But this goes to your earlier point, like there will be brands that churn out tons of content, a lot of it AI generated, but that's people aren't expecting something different from them. They're doing social posts, banner ads, posters, whatever, at the speed of culture or media or whatever. But then there will be brands that choose to stand out with a more real approach or use that as, and we're already seeing in other categories where they're trying to make their lack of AI use a differentiation point. And I feel like beauty, depending on the brand, depending on what its own, it just comes back to like if a brand knows who it is, and if they're slash and burn, run and gun kind of brand that's just like churning out content constantly, people don't expect it to be like fine tuned, like, oh, we're as real as nature as you were born, the day you were born. It's kind of like those expectations change based on the brand, basically, and it feels like the beauty brand will have like. It's not binary. It's like there's going to be tons of nuance in how these brands use it, particularly in marketing materials.
Another way of putting it is that it could be kind of a luxury to be able to do things the old-fashioned way, because as AI becomes more sophisticated and you might even be able to get more and more realistic images using AI, it's going to be so tempting for a startup that doesn't have a massive budget to be using AI to create, perhaps more like realistic, authentic, in quotes, images, whereas like an LVMH brand that has tons of money to spend on marketing will be able to do real photo shoots. And maybe even like Photoshop will be this like very laborious process and, comparison. And maybe it'll be okay to do that again. I don't know. We're so early in this conversation that I don't know what the culture is going to be like, right, in 10 years from now, and how comfortable we're going to be with these images, and also how AI might evolve in such a way that it is not necessarily dramatically changing what a face looks like. I mean, you might be able to just get the image of a model and have it be a very realistic portrayal of her.
It's like just change the color of her shirt.
Totally, but it'll be very, very realistic. But yeah, I think it's a very bold statement for a company like Dove to say we're never going to use AI, because
never say never, maybe.
Never say never. Yeah, you're going to have to eat your words.
I've been approaching this podcast as a snapshot in time of how brands are approaching AI. In 5 years, hell, maybe just 1 year from now, I'll be curious to see how the brands we've talked about here have evolved. Maybe Dove will stick to their guns. Maybe a beauty brand like Sephora will make a misstep and get a backlash like what happened with Photoshop, as Liz talked about. I'm pretty confident in one thing, though. The number of ways brands will be using AI is only going to increase, whether that's in public or not. Now, back to Vlad and Zina. So we got a peek under Sephora's hood, but I'm curious about the conversations Zina and Vlad are having with their peers in beauty and beyond, about how they're navigating this space right now.
When you're talking to fellow CMOs or CIOs, if solicited, what would be your advice be to them about? Well, first, actually, I'll ask, if you've had conversations, what are the most common sort of questions and or challenges your peers talk about, and what advice do you offer based on your own experience when those conversations do happen? Zina, how about we start with you?
Yeah, we talk about it a lot in the CMO circles I'm in, because everybody wants to figure this out. There's a lot of hype, and there's some glimmers of some real possibilities in all of that hype, and we all want to figure it out. I think the broad consensus that most of us have come to is, while it's going to be even more helpful, and it is helpful today, AI isn't kind of the end all and be all of marketing. It's a tool in our toolkit. We have to use it like many others to help connect with our clients in the ways that best, resonate. It's about building trust within our brand. The true essence of marketing is, how do you address the customer need in a unique and kind of breakthrough way? And if you can use AI to do that better, faster, fantastic. But that kind of essence of what we do is the same, regardless if you use AI or not. It's just important that you use it as with any other tool, kind of in your brand voice, with your brand's purpose, your mission, your values at the heart. I mentioned earlier, we don't take a splashy approach to what we do with AI. But I want to say I really appreciate those who do. One of the things that I have talked about with a lot of my peers, this is, a little bit similar to the digital revolution that happened in marketing, 20 odd years ago.
Absolutely.
And the way that the entire practice advanced is when CMOs would share with one another what's working, what isn't working. So I think to advance how we all use AI best, the key thing that we need to do is everyone leaning in, trying things, and then sharing with each other what works and what doesn't.
Nice. I've been talking to people about that, like lessons from the initial digital revolution in terms of like in marketing and brand, like how, because it feels like some issues from back then haven't been reconciled, and how things translate, like whether, obviously Sephora is not an example of this, but sometimes you have people with their digital presence does not reflect the customer experience reality in real life, and that how to balance those two things is an ongoing challenge. Vlad, how about you talking to CIOs and just the sheer constant, it seems, advancement of this technology and how companies are using it and navigating what to use and when? What would your advice be to a fellow CIO, or what are those conversations like?
Yeah, when we're talking to CIOs, obviously always the question is what's next big thing? Because all of us, we lead large organizations. You need to make sure that your organization is ready with appropriate tools to support the business. And I think now the answer is pretty straightforward. It's data and AI, and it's been for probably the last 5 years, but it just keeps reconfirming that this is the next big thing. And so from organizational perspective, with that in mind, you really want to make sure that your organizational engineers are ready for next iteration, right? And typically, because it was so new in technology organization, you have one team that does data and AI. And I think next challenge is how do you spread it across? Because you cannot afford to have one small team and organization doing data and AI anymore. But there are too many use cases. They're in too many business domains. So really you need to figure out how do you spread this? We call it AI democratization. How do you spread this knowledge? You can still have this expert group, but everyone else needs to be doing AI. Everyone else needs to understand what it does and connect with their business stakeholders in their domain to offer them solutions. And that's how we become stronger. So that's, in my opinion, that's the next, the challenge that we're working on right now, and many companies should be working on.
Yeah, that sounds, going back to your point, Zina, about the original digital officers, remember back then it was like there were the digital people and there was the digital, or even like digital agencies or digital. And now it's like, you're not a digital marketer, you're just a marketer. Like it's not, it sounds like what Vlad's talking about is that like, there's the AI people. Of course, like you said, there's going to be the specialty group that's always, on that bleeding edge, but really it's everybody that's going to be kind of working with it.
That's right. It has to get embedded in an organization to scale. So that will happen, but we're in early days.
I'm really glad I got to talk to Zina and Vlad at the same time, because at this critical and early time of AI integrating into our businesses, their two functions are linked incredibly closely. Vlad's point about these tools having to be equally distributed throughout the organization and not just cloistered in one department rings true. It echoes something Nilesh Ashra has talked to us about. When it comes down to it, this is a bottom-up technology, and the only way a marketer or a brand is going to truly understand how it can help their business is by each and every person rolling up their sleeves and getting into it, experimenting, trying things, seeing what works, what doesn't, and move on. As Vlad said, that's the only way they're going to get stronger. A few things both Liz and Zina zeroed in on also really stuck out to me. When I was talking to Liz about Dove's pledge to never use AI in its ad creative, she said that our expectations should and will change depending on the brand. Forget AI for a second. That is a golden rule of brand. Your approach to AI, just as your approach to comedy or social issues, should be rooted in what the most true and genuine path should be for your particular brand. Speaking of the golden rules of brand, Zena said that it will be very difficult to adjust to AI for some brands who still haven't reconciled with the first digital revolution. You know the ones. They're the ones with incredibly slick websites and social media that completely misrepresents a clunky and frankly subpar retail experience. As she said, how to balance those two things is an ongoing challenge, and brands have been trying to solve the puzzle at varying degrees for 20 years. Now, Gen AI has added another incredibly complex piece of its own. Okay, we've obviously been talking a lot about how marketers are and plan to use Gen AI tools. But next episode, we're flying out to Mountain View, California to talk to Google's Chief Marketing Officer, Lorraine Toohill, about marketing those Gen AI tools. See you next time.
Brand New World is an MIC podcast from Fast Company. Our producers are Yaz Gagne, Grace Snelling, Blake Odom, and Avery Miles. Mix and sound design by Nicholas Torres. Our executive producer and editor is Josh Christensen. Be sure to subscribe to Brand New World on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. You can also hear all episodes in the Most Innovative Companies podcast feed. If you like this podcast, leave us a rating and review on your podcast app of choice, or let us know in the comments of Fast Company's social media. We're basically on every app you can think of. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week.